Welcome to Destination Indie. This is your one-stop shop for all of the games that you want to check out over on Xbox Game Pass. With me, as always, I have none other than Kyleia, the aficionado. Kyleia, how are you doing?
I'm great. How about you?
Good. We're playing fast and loose with the episode today. So if this sounds weird, we'll probably fix it in post, or just not at all. You know what? I don't know if I'm going to bother with that. But we've got a great game to check out today. We're going to be checking out Rain on Your Parade. We were playing around with the way that we wanted to do this. We've been trying to get scheduling down, and we finally decided that we're going to do one game per episode. And I think today is going to be a good one, because I don't think that we necessarily agree on this, but you wanted to pick up on Rain on Your Parade. So I'm kind of curious, getting into this as it's something that's on Xbox Game Pass, what made you decide that you wanted to go with this?
It was weird, and weird speaks to me.
That's why we're friends. Okay, that makes more sense now. Well, I don't blame you. It was definitely really a weird game, but to kind of get into it, did you want to break down kind of who these people are, what's going on with them, and then we'll jump into the actual gameplay?
Yeah. Let's do a fact sheet on it. So, Rain on Your Parade was a day one release to Game Pass on April 15th of this year, and it is both made and published by Unbound Creations. Unbound Creations is a studio of 5 people. That's right, 5. And what's intriguing about this is it goes to show that Game Pass can really be a good platform for indies. They actually released 1 week later that they had 150,000 downloads in their first week. And I think that is awesome, because there's so many people out there, actually up to 28 million subscribers now, that have Game Pass. So without any risk, they can try these games and be like, wow, this is really neat. Or, maybe in your case, not so neat.
Well, but at least this gave me an opportunity to come up with that without feeling like I needed to, put a whole bunch of money into it just based on everyone else's reception. Because I'll be honest, everyone's reception of this was really, really good. So I was like, cool, well, it must be a really fun game. And it just, I don't know if it's necessarily for me, but I'm glad that so many of these games are getting put on Game Pass so that the creators can actually have this opportunity. So it's crazy that they managed to get 150K in just the first week, though. Like, I can't imagine having 150,000 people look like in my own mind, but I'm really glad that they did that. But you talked about free DLC. Do you know what DLC that they released?
Well, so the DLC is actually not for Rain on Your Parade, but actually around the same time that they announced that they'd had 150,000 downloads, Spiritfarer, which is another day one release late last year, announced that they had over 500,000 sales, not downloads, sales of the game, thanks to Game Pass, and they did free DLC for everybody as a thank you. So okay. I love that Game Pass is there and that they're picking up as many indies as they are. I know some people out there aren't big fans of indies or don't feel like it's a value to them, but I'm big, especially, with E3 season and everything like that. I think that be hype about what you want to be hype about, and, let everybody else have their hype. No sense on step on everybody else's joy.
It's true. And we're getting a whole bunch it seems like almost every month, we're getting a bunch of different ones getting brought to Game Pass. So it's at least there's something else to check out. I think that's one of the things that Game Pass does well, is it allows indie developers a much better discoverability than, say, something like the Switch Online Store. The Switch Online Store, when it first came out, was amazing for indies, because everyone, that was the only thing to really do on Switch, outside of the major releases. Indies really made their place there, but now they're struggling with discoverability. And I think I think Game Pass is one of those things where it's curated and the deals are already in place. So there's no question whether or not devs are going to have to, drop their games down to $1 or 10 cents to get up on the best-selling charts so that they can get noticed, because the ecosystem is just so flooded with games. Not to say that there aren't indies outside of Game Pass, but having your game as an indie on Game Pass really does help give you that chance. Like, I probably wouldn't have checked out Rain on Your Parade if it wasn't on Game Pass.
I'd agree with that. Like, there's a lot of games out there that And don't get me wrong, I have my hands in all kinds of indies, but there's a lot of games out there that I think, oh, well, I'll try that later, or, maybe when that drops in price or whatever. And then I see it come on Game Pass and I'm like, well, heck yeah, man, I've been meaning to try this anyways. And this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And there's still a bunch that I personally know that I want to jump into, just based on like other companies that have been brought into the fold that I've never even heard, like the Dishonored games from Bethesda. Like I've never even heard of those when those came out. So having those on top of something like Slime Rancher or Wild Hearts, great examples of games that are going to be alongside these really good games that people talk about that most people probably missed out on. And if you're getting tired of those, it's like, oh, well, I want something a little lighthearted. So I'll jump into Slime Rancher or Knockout City. Like that's another one.
Or Maneater.
Maneater's I did jump into that one too. That was one that I love these AA games sometimes. Maneater is just that quirky, goofy game about being a shark that I had so many opportunities to pick it up and I didn't because I was just kind of sitting back hoping that, maybe it could come to Game Pass. That'd be kind of cool. And it did. And I've actually been enjoying it there. But let's focus on Rain on Your Parade. With this, it's an interesting one. And I feel like I kind of want you to dive into it first because I feel like you'd have a more positive spin on this compared to me. But what did you think going into this when you saw it? Was this something that you were keeping an eye on from the get-go, or did this kind of pop up out of nowhere for you?
Well, it really kind of popped up out of nowhere. I did hear about it a couple of weeks before it came to the service. And I was like, that looks interesting. I think I'll definitely try that. So when it did launch, I did pop into it on day one, get it downloaded. And I was pleasantly surprised. So the game itself has 50 levels overall. And well, you would think, okay, so Rain on Your Parade, what do you do in that? Well, you're a cloud. And it's kind of like a top-down experience where you are the cloud. And your first level, you rain on a wedding, which, aptly Rain on Your Parade kind of thing. And these people are getting married and you're like wrecking the entire level. You're like soaking the chair, soaking the people. They're running into each other. The wife slips, the bride slips and falls. Like, it's madness. And it's a really good introduction to what you're going to experience over the course of 50 levels.
Yeah.
What I think is really unique as you play through the game is that they were determined, and I can tell that they were determined to be like, yeah, this is a cool game about a cloud that can rain on things and like cause chaos, but we don't want it to be the same thing over and over. We want it to be each level to have its own distinct feel, and they really take that and go above and beyond with it.
They do. And that was, I think, the saving grace for me. Playing Rain on Your Parade was pretty straightforward. You're a cloud, or you're a cardboard cloud being held up by strings, which is kind of funny because it's like a little puppet or a little miniature on like a different set piece. And having the ability to, for example, like get tar instead of rain and be able to create a path of like a flammable tar or oil or whatever it is, and then set it on fire was really fun to, it's Rain on Your Parade, but I'm setting fire to this library or this storage unit with all these shelves and stuff of these fireworks blowing up everywhere. And it was surprising. I wasn't expecting things like that. There was one level that I really wasn't expecting. When you get to later on in the game, you get the ability to use your lightning or like a shoot lightning down on the ground. And the whole premise is to actually scare people that are in a building who are walking around with flashlights looking for ghosts. And the whole point is just to not get caught by the lights. So you kind of have that little bit of a sneaking element. And once you sneak up behind them and shock them, or at least shock behind them, they freak out and start running around and going through the entire level, trying not to get caught as this rain cloud and using lightning to freak out these ghost hunters really did kind of crack me up. Like I was kind of surprised, and that was one of the levels that I will say I definitely enjoyed. Many of the other levels I had trouble with because, while they did play around with the idea of giving you different tools or different elements to use, like lightning or snow, things like that, I did find myself kind of rushing through the dialogue or rushing through the levels and just wanting to try and hit the main objectives. And it's a shame because I feel like there are a lot of levels that have hidden things that you can discover, either, following a guide or getting into, weird scenarios where you're trying to play around with the different elements and the physics and stuff. But were there any levels that kind of snuck out in your mind?
Yeah. So there are, like I said, 50 different levels, but they also, within copyright limits, knocked off a bunch of other games and TV shows, which was kind of a fun, unique aspect of it. There's a Silent Hill level, which is the one that you were talking about, where you're spooking people with the lightning. There's a Doom level. There's a Metal Gear Solid level, which I was not good at all, and I had to do like 6 times. There's an office level, which is hilarious, to like roll up into people's offices and use the tornado and just start like throwing computers and raining on people, and it's really kind of a chaos simulator. There's even an RPG level, and just the way that they handled that and adjusted the game is really interesting. Some levels you've got a boss to defeat. Some levels there's a sun that like chases you around, and you have to stay out of the way of the sun because otherwise it sucks all your rain. And then there's different goals. But I have to say one of my favorite levels was the zombie level. And
Yes.
in that level, you pick up this like toxic ooze and you rain it on a graveyard. And then what happens is those people come out of the ground and become zombies, and they follow you around. So your whole point in the level is to like lead your zombies to other humans and stuff like that, and just wreck the whole city, turn everybody into zombies. Just the amount of chaos you can create is fantastic. I also really liked the pet the dog level, which is really, really dumb, but I really enjoyed it because all you do is rain hands onto a dog to pet him.
That's the judge. That's the thing that games are judged on now, like, can you pet the dog? There's a whole Twitter devoted to making sure that people know. It's like the, I'm blanking on the name. I think it's the Bichelle test. I hate myself for not remembering this, but it's the test of a movie where you can have 2 female characters speaking to one another about something that doesn't pertain to a man or something that a man is doing. And if your movie can pass that test, then you've passed the Bichelle. I think it's Bichelle. I'm going to hate myself for not remembering this.
I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I just cannot recall the name either.
I look for that in films to see if it's even possible. And thankfully films are getting better at that. But it's funny that, things like that, things like, can you pet the dog, are now a thing that developers are taking into account when making a game, because someone had the brilliant idea of going through video games and recording whether or not you could pet a dog in that video game, and then making a Twitter account to share that scientific knowledge with the rest of the world. So I'm with you on that zombie one, though. Knowledge. It's scientific. They test. There's results. There's expectations and postings. But yeah, the zombie level, honestly, I really love that one. That was one of my favorites because it felt like the opposite end of Days Gone, where instead of being, Deacon Cross or Mr. Motorcycle protagonist man with the guns and whatnot, killing the hordes of zombies, you actually got to make the zombies in this case, and they followed the cloud wherever they went. And you went running down the streets with hordes of zombies, going up against tanks and barriers and guns and things like that. And then I found out that while the zombies were eating brains, I could go ahead with the cloud and actually use the lightning to actually shock and kill and destroy most of the actual cars and tanks and stuff. So I was like, heck yeah, this is way better. Why don't zombies employ clouds? They would get so much further in life. Or unlife, whatever you want to call it. One of the levels that I thought was really, really fun were the boss levels, though. And partially because it was a lot more taxing of what I had to do, as opposed to just find the thing that you need to rain on and rain on it. So the boss levels, I thought, with the way that it's set up, is you're going up against a Dr. Robotnik style Dr. Dry Spell guy. And he has a bunch of robotic turrets that most of the time they're stationary. Sometimes they're on tracks. Sometimes you have to use them, but they have a red laser with a targeting beam, and they fire rockets after a short period of time, similar to the kind of the bullet bill style things from Mario games where they just shoot out a rocket towards you. But using those to either destroy each other or to destroy environment, to try and get further into the level, I actually really enjoyed. The boss levels actually gave me a challenge that I wasn't anticipating with this game. And I kind of wish that there was a little more that you had to do when you were in some of the other levels that gave you something like that. Like some of the like for example, the zombie levels, the people in the zombie level attack the zombie, but they don't actually attack the cloud. So the cloud's always safe, except for these boss levels. And I think they probably should have had something else like that. I would have loved to have seen something that kind of makes it a little more of a challenge through the normal levels instead of just working out the puzzle. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm actually in complete and total disagreement.
Okay.
I did not enjoy the boss levels at all. Well, it provided a centralized space for you to utilize your abilities that you have gained, between the snow and the lightning and the tornado and everything like that, and figure out a way to get past like the boss's defenses and everything like that. I felt like they were not quite as enjoyable as some of the other levels. And I think that for me, it was the details. Like in one of the levels, you're in a school and you go into the science lab and you start mixing things you shouldn't. And all of a sudden you're setting the whole place on fire. Or there's a volcano in the gymnasium that you can mess with and cause it to do things. And just the fact that they sat there and they said, what can the cloud interact with in multiple ways in each of these levels, that it really stood out to me. Where I didn't see that in the boss levels. In the boss levels, it was basically get to the end and do so within a time limit and without getting hurt. And if so, we'll even give you an achievement. And I didn't find the joy in it like you did.
Interesting. Okay. I will agree that the way that they had, for example, like that the school one where you actually had to play around with some of the different chemicals. I did appreciate the way that they designed some of those. You mentioned how you can interact with so much in these levels. I honestly think that you can interact with a little too much. Even when you get into the title screen, it seems like physics are enabled on everything, and everything wants to fly off into oblivion when you do a lightning strike, which looks cool the first time, but at some points it's kind of like, okay, I get it. Everything's going to be a mess. Everything's going to bounce around. And sometimes that actually makes it tough to complete some of the levels just by, not 100% understanding what you have to do in each level. Every time I got into a level, there would be a list of tasks that you had to complete, plus some hidden ones. And sometimes not all of those were 100% clear. And it always kind of annoyed me that I had to hit a button to check and see what the tasks were instead of the tasks just being completely like on the screen all the time so I could see it. But I see where you're coming at with the boss levels. I think it was the threat to the cloud that I appreciated compared to some of the other levels where it was just like, oh, go and put a bunch of snow down in these areas to try and get these people to slide off a mountain.
And I do feel like there are some levels that are far worse than others. Like some of the levels really stand out. Like there's a level where you have to, and I'm not going to give you any spoilers on this, you have to figure out how to get some aliens in a hot tub. And I think that the thought process of what you need to do to make that happen is really interesting. And I really enjoyed that. And then there is a level where you have a bunch of people on like a platform and you just have to snow on the platform and fling them off. And it's like, I understand that they're trying to do different things in each levels, but not all of those levels are winners.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, let's take the moon example that you brought up with the hot tub. Looking at that level, it's very sparse. There's realistically maybe 3 or 4 things you can interact with on that entire level. And while the puzzle that they had there was nice, you could tell that the entire thing was just that idea of making the hot tub. And they're like, well, are we going to make a whole level for it? And they're like, yeah, why not? It doesn't have to be that much. And that's the only time that I can recall that you actually went to like a space level with altered gravity. And I was kind of bummed out at looking at it because I'm like, this is really boring. There's not much here. all of the other, like The Office, for example, that level, so much in that level was designed and laid out to reflect The Office show and the layout of that building. And they did such a good job with it that it was really fun to be in that level. But then I look at, the level where you're on top of a mountain and you just learn how to snow, and having the snow mechanic is fun because you use it later on in a TV studio where you have to get the meteorologist out of the building. And snow
I hated that one.
Yeah, that was one where it's like you had to make him a snowball and then you had to get him to roll out of the building. But there's so many little tables and computers and chairs and things in the way that everything just turns into a giant mess. Like if you were to take someone's beautiful little miniature of an actual cityscape, like a Lego cityscape. We'll use Lego for this example. If you had like a really well set up Lego cityscape, and someone came by with a brush and just knocked it all over and pushed it all over, and all that hard work to set up those little figures was just completely ruined by you trying to get this one little thing out of the way. And things like that detracted from my enjoyment because I felt like I was fighting the environment more than I was solving the puzzle. Like I'd already worked out like what I had to do for the puzzle, but fighting the physics of the game was the thing that kind of turned me off the most. But when I look at the actual puzzles of the levels, I really appreciate some of the ingenuity that they came up with the puzzles. There's a Western level that comes to mind where there's two men out in the middle of the street in between these Western kind of log houses. And one of the tasks is to get a bunch of tumbleweeds to roll across the road. And the whole idea is it's an homage to Westerns where there was that one tumbleweed that went across as the two shooters were staring each other down, waiting for that quick draw, and having a tornado ability to pull a whole bunch of little tumbleweeds across the road. It was cute. I appreciated that they're like, hey, remake this kind of Western in this quick little notion and check it off. So things like that. I love the ability to have different levels that give you different puzzles, when that puzzle is something that kind of adds to a joke that you would tell about something. Like The Office is a perfect example. It's like the whole show is chaos, and you have to get the people in the office to do certain things using the cloud, and you're kind of remaking The Office at that point, and it serves the game by trying to make something fun and entertaining that's reflecting on something in the past.
So I do agree with you on some of the points that you made. Like when you're playing through a level, sometimes, although you want the physics to work with you, of course, all the time, they don't work with you at all. They'll work completely against you, and it can make that level not fun to play. I want to bring up that Weatherman level really quick because I was so angry. That's probably my least favorite level in the entire game. Because in the beginning of the level, it shows you a cutscene with people's names, and then it says throw so-and-so off of down the stairs.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I wasn't paying that much attention to the faces and the names of who's who. So I spent half an hour trying to grab each person and turn them into a snowball and throw them down the stairs in hopes that one of them was the one I needed, which, by the way, turns out it wasn't. Had to restart the level and do it again. Not happy with that experience.
Yeah. Let's talk about the water mechanic in this, because you have a set amount of water and you have different buttons that allow you to change either do water or do snow. And I don't know about you, but I come from a different mentality. Like when I'm dropping snow down on something, I'm expecting a solid line, and this just kind of plops it out in little chunks. So many of the levels where I'm sitting there playing this snowy thing where I have to use snow as the actual mechanic, I would constantly catch myself re-going over the route that I was trying to make because I didn't know how much snow was enough. I didn't know if one bit of snow was enough to cover a fair amount of where I needed the little humans to slip and fall. So I would sit there and dump a whole bunch of snow and waste half of my water, and then end up having to find the actual resource. And sometimes there wasn't actually a well or the ocean or a river that you can kind of refill your water gauge on. And I felt like while the water was a type of puzzle mechanic, you had to work within the water reserve that you had, that water reserve actually changes, or at least it appears to change based on the level that you're using. and that factors into how much water you have, and it never felt like you had the same amount of water going from one to another. And I kind of wish that it was just all water all the time, all snow all the time, and you didn't have to worry about that resource.
I think that's part of what creates the challenge on certain levels, though. Like, for example, the very last level, no, I'm not spoiling anything. It's kind of like a Plants versus Zombies tower defense level.
Yeah.
And in that level, you need to strategically utilize all of your capabilities up to that point, your tornado, your snow, your lightning, and your water, to try and protect a city. And in between waves, I mean, you will run out of your water during the wave. So in between waves, what you end up doing is making a mad dash to the bottom of the screen to refill your water. And I feel like that's part of what creates the difficulty of the game. Not that it's hard by any means, but you know what I mean? It's there to try and, so you're not just holding A the entire time and running around the level and then you're done.
Yeah.
It gives you a finite resource. And most levels do have that capability to refill in some manner whatever resource you're using, whether it's the tar or the toxic goo or snow or rain or whatever, that is. It gives you some sort of refill capability. Or on some levels, it gives you capability to switch between two as well.
Yeah, and I like it for when it's like a challenge, like you're on that last level, for example. That's a good test of how efficient can you be. But other ones where it's like, just go water on all the plants, and I've got a meter, and I'm like, okay, well, the cloud moves super slow on the screen, and that was another kind of pain point for me. I wish that the cloud could have been faster when I'm actually playing through it, but having to, like, I felt like it was detracting from my fun of the game when I was like getting close to that last little bit of water, and I still had to find a couple people that I had to get wet. And I'm like, oh, man, do I either spend the time finding a well or a river and going there and refilling, and then hunting down the little people that are running around scared? We're probably hiding behind something. Or do I just try and make do with what I have and just finish up the level? And I felt like that always kind of detracted from how much fun I was getting out of each level, which is why I think some levels like the zombie one or the Silent Hill, Metal Gear, those ones I had more fun with than I did, say, just the straightforward raining on stuff thing.
And you really liked the Katamari level.
I did. That was a fun one. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, but there's definitely a level where you get a black hole, and the whole goal of it is to start sucking things up into the black hole. And I quickly realized that the hole gets bigger, and I was like, oh, this is a Katamari level. This is a Donut County level. I was hoping that there'd be more of something like this. And it keeps pushing me back to the ideas. Like, I just need to go play Katamari Damacy, but I'm good with that level. The other level that was kind of like that was the excavation level. There's a whole level just dedicated to using and that was one of the nice things about the game is that the game actually builds up your powers slowly and gives you good levels to actually play around with those powers. At no point did I feel like the game was giving me too many powers or too little powers. It felt like the pacing of each of the different powers was well managed, and they did a good job of saying, like, all right, you got lightning, let's go play with lightning for a while. Or, oh, you get tornadoes, let's go play with tornadoes for a while. And I never felt like I was without the other powers. I always had those other powers. They just weren't always relevant to the puzzle, because the puzzle was trying to get you comfortable with the new power that we were getting. And then they kept bringing you further and further along till you get to that last level where you do actually have to utilize all of your powers. So they've done a great job of building out enough levels to get you to a point where you're happy, or at least, competent of the powers that you have, so that you can take on that last level.
I'd actually like to use this opportunity to go from there to kind of talk about your goals within the levels.
Yeah.
So each level has primary and secondary objectives. Primary objectives are what you have to complete in order to leave that level. And then secondary objectives are just extra fun things. So there's a level called Campground. And no, I'm not spoiling anything, but you have to burn all of the tents, you have to put out all the campfires, and you have to feed the bear. Now, burning and putting out the campfires are both primary objectives, and feeding the bear is a secondary objective. And when you go through the level and you're doing all of this stuff, it awards you a star. So it'll give you 1 star for burning the tents, 1 star for putting out the campfires, and at that point you are able to leave the level if you'd like to. If you feed the bear, then it gives you a 3rd star. So I spent a good portion of my gameplay playthrough trying to get every objective within the level. And sometimes there's hidden objectives that you don't know about till you start like throwing something around or you rain on it. Like it may have an objective that's rain on all the humans, but until you rain on multiple humans, it may not pop up to tell you that that's an objective.
Yeah.
And so I spent a good portion of my gameplay time trying to get all of these objectives done and get as many stars out of every level as possible, only to find out about 3/4 of the way through that it doesn't matter. As long as you do your primary objectives and leave the level, the next level will open up. The secondary objectives do nothing for you except for unlock some customizations. And while I appreciate that, I feel like that could have been better explained so that people who aren't interested in doing all of the additional objectives wouldn't have to.
Yeah, that was an interesting one too, because I don't think that the cosmetics that you earn from the special objectives really impacted like my enjoyment of the game. I could have left or kept them or left them. They didn't really do anything outside of just changing my cloud. And while some of them were good, it wasn't like I got full customization, or at least saw like what all were available. Like if I had a gallery that provided an entire catalog of all the different cosmetics that I could earn through the game and gave me descriptions of how to get them and where to get them, I might have been more inclined to hunt down some of those in particular. But instead, the ones that I found, I applied the ones that I thought were the most interesting, and I played around with the color, and I left it at that for the rest of the game. And I never went back to check and see what some of those were, because with a lot of those levels, by the time I got towards the end of the game, I was just doing the starred levels because I just wanted to get through each one to see the ending, to see what that was about.
And I think that's a good opportunity for me to talk about New Game Plus. So when you do finish the game, it unlocks New Game Plus, and you're like, oh, cool. So do I get more levels, or how does New Game Plus affect everything? You get more objectives.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen them expand more or do more with the New Game Plus, which since you only have to go through probably about 40 of the levels to actually get to the end. I don't know. Like, I feel you had brought up earlier that you feel like 50 is too many levels. If it was half of that, I feel like that maybe wouldn't be enough because of the differing and varying levels that they've put out within the game. So I don't know what a happy number is, but once you get to the end, you're kind of like, oh, thank goodness it's over. I'm done.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about New Game Plus too, because I found out about it. I was happy where I got with the main game. I didn't feel like I needed to do any more. But with New Game Plus, did you see anything that gives you the ability to create your own levels?
No, I did not.
I think that would have been a good way to make this game more interesting. I think if they had given you a playground, like a gray box area where you could go in and place any of the little things that they have in the game and build up your own worlds, kind of, like a Minecraft. And then similar to like a Minecraft meets, say, like Super Mario Maker, being able to let people have those levels to play around in your world and build custom objectives for your level. I think that would have been amazing for a game like this. I think it would have had a lot more life for the game. But that being said, I also recognize that this is a game that was made by 5 people. Yeah.
I mean, it would have been a very natural segue for them to implement something like that. But, being that it is a 5-person studio team, like, it's just not something where I think that would have been feasible for their first release. They've done such a good job. Really, truly. I mean, there's a couple of levels that I had to restart because I flung the objective off the map or something like that.
Yeah.
But in general, like, it was not egregiously buggy. There's, nothing really funky that I wanted to just throw the game down or anything like that, other than the fact it was a long game. I thought that they did an incredible job with their first foray, and I definitely, and that's why we're talking about it, because I think that people who haven't played this would enjoy it. I think it's an excellent game for kids, achievement hunters, or anybody who just wants to take a break and play something silly.
Yeah. Yeah, this was something that if you enjoyed Untitled Goose Game, this would be
Yes.
a great game to jump into, because not everything is completely, put into your hand and said these are all the things you can do with this game. A lot of this game is set up for just kind of discovering things on your own. It's a beautiful stylized game. I think that they've really nailed down the mechanics and built some really great puzzles for it. I just don't know that it was something that really would have held my attention compared to some of the other games that are available on Game Pass. But that really is speaking personally about it. It's so hard for me to say like this is going to be a good game for everyone, because I don't know that it would keep everyone's attention. I do think that if you enjoyed things like Untitled Goose Game, Katamari Damacy, the other game that they made that I'm blanking out on right now, it's got the Piku something, I can't remember the name of it, but it's something that I think you could probably pick up and beat in 3 hours if you just wanted to 100% star this. But with New Game Plus mode and having all the different hidden objectives, if you wanted to pick up a guide and start going through each of them, you could probably still knock it out. But I would say that this is a really great example of a game that should be on Game Pass.
I would absolutely agree with you on that. I think that a quirky, weird game like this would maybe not get the attention it deserves were it not on Game Pass. And I think that this is a great idea for the developer to make that coordination with Microsoft to set that up. I don't really have a whole lot to add on this. I do say it's a fun game, but I completely forgot to mention there is a level where you get to relive the extinction of the dinosaurs. And that is probably one of my top levels as well, along with that zombie level.
Yeah, I forgot.
I felt terrible, but it was amazing.
Yeah, that was a great one. That one, I will say that definitely brought the game back up a little higher in my rankings because of that level, just to see a bunch of little dinosaurs running around and get to be dropping meteors. It's things like that I think I appreciated more with the game than some of the puzzles that they had you do. And it's unfortunate because I think when they stepped outside of that box, you got a hint of what some of the ideas were that they had when they were making this game, but they had to figure out how can they make some of these fun challenges or just fun events and get it to relate to being a cloud over people. And that was kind of the bummer for me, because I'm like, if this wasn't called Rain on Your Parade and it was just a puzzle simulator and it didn't have like any kind of stipulation, then I wonder what else could they have done with it to really kind of go out there with some of these different levels, like the Silent Hill level and the Metal Gear Solid level, the Office level, the Doom one. Those ones were so interesting to me, but they're because it's because they stepped out of the bounds of what you would normally do in the rest of the game.
I would agree with that. I think if they would have spent the game doing more general insanity and how am I trying to put this? Try to vary it completely instead of just varying it a little bit. I think that radicalness would have actually worked in the game's favor and not against it. But as it is, it's still pretty all over the place and still a really interesting experience.
Yeah, I definitely agree. How were you with the achievements for this?
So the achievements are pretty reasonable. Some of them are little things like wear sunglasses at night, or wear a top hat to a wedding, or silly things with the customizations. There's some for finishing certain levels without like using any water or in certain time trials. Some are just for completing the levels as you move through them. They're kind of spread all over the place. You can easily accomplish them, I'd say, in less than 5 hours. But a lot of them you won't get until you unlock New Game Plus. I don't know why that is. So if you're trying to get an achievement in the game and it's not unlocking, you may want to double check and see if that's one that requires you to be in New Game Plus. They did fix a glitch that was available early on where you could dump all of your water and snow at the same time on the boss levels and it would just auto-complete. And as I understand, it's now fixed, so that's kind of a bummer because those boss levels were tough because you'd have to do the whole level without being damaged and within the time limit. And so if you use that little cheat, I guess, of just dumping all the snow and water out, and it would be like, you're done, and you're like, oh, thank goodness, I really actually didn't want to do that within the time limit and without being damaged. And that's probably why I hate the boss levels more than you, is because I was not aware of that particular cheese early on. So I was doing it the intended way, and I was getting seriously angry with those levels, because trying to do them without getting hurt and trying to do them in like, sometimes it's like a minute and 45 seconds, like it's fast, you know.
Yeah.
You have to be precision perfect. But outside of those, the achievements aren't bad at all.
See, I think that's so funny, because to me, I didn't even take into consideration what those achievements are. So I was just kind of blazing through it the way I was normally doing. With some of the levels, I had more, like I got through them, but at one point I had, like towards the end of one of the boss levels, I actually realized what the mechanic was that you needed to kind of get one of the requirements done. And once I received that, I was just like, oh, okay, now I know what to do. Now I'm going to restart the level and I'm going to jump back in and complete it very quickly. So I appreciated how quick it was that you could get in and out of a level if you wanted to restart it, say you'd mess something up.
The load times are actually extremely minimal in this, and that was really nice.
Yeah.
Again, for somebody's first game made with 5 people, it's just a really smooth game, and I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, I definitely appreciated that as well too. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up on Rain on Your Parade?
No, not too much. We're going to be doing Haven and Plague Tale Innocence in future episodes, so definitely keep your ear out for that. Our Haven one will most likely be a not safe for kids episode, as that game is an M-rated game. But yeah, those are definitely some of the things that we're going to be talking about soon, as well as some Sea of Solitude.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into discussion for Sea of Solitude as well too, because that's one where it's such a compelling game, and it has an actual narrative to it. So I'm looking forward to Haven. I'm looking forward to Sea of Solitude. Kyleia, if you don't mind, let people know where they can get in hold of you if they want to talk about Rain on Your Parade.
Okay, well, you can always get in contact with me at destinationindie@gmail.com. I also have Twitter. You can reach me at KYLEIA on Twitter, or Dest Indie, because apparently Destination Indie is too long. And then we also have a channel in the Keelhaul Discord. So definitely one of those ways, get a hold of me. Let's talk. Did you think, are you more on Logan's train on this game, or do you think more like me and it's overall a great game?
I'm 100% willing to bet most people are probably going to side with you on this one. A lot of people seem to really enjoy this game, and I can't say I blame them. I see where the trappings are to have fun. I just don't know that it was for me, but I'm glad that I got a chance to play it on Xbox Game Pass. If you want, you can as well. And with that, if you want to get a hold of me, you can always reach me at CAPT_LOGON on Twitter. You can always hit me up in the Discord. Send us an email over at the Destination Indie email address and let us know what you think. And I think that is going to do it for this episode. Join us next time for some more Destination Indie.
Thanks, everyone.